Alright, picture this for a second. You're in a relationship that's already hanging on by a thread. It's long distance, so every text, every call, every delay feels magnified 100 times. The connection is fragile, and you're constantly worried about whether it will survive. Now imagine this. You step away for an hour, just 1 hour, to have a conversation with your mom. You come back, check your phone, and suddenly your girlfriend has broken up with you. Yeah, you heard that right. That's exactly what happened to me. 1 minute, everything seemed normal. We were even planning when we'd finally meet up in real life. It felt like progress. But the very next minute, my phone buzzed with messages accusing me of ignoring her. Before I could even process what was happening, she had already ended things with me, just like that. No discussion, no patience, no warning. Now let me give you some context here, because I know what you're thinking. Wait, why would she just break up with you over something that small? That's what I thought too. But this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. We had this on and off cycle going, where tiny arguments would explode into full-blown breakups, only for us to patch things up again a few days later. This time though, it hit differently. See, the day started out completely ordinary. She and I were talking about how we'd meet in person, something we'd both been waiting for. She said she wanted to meet as soon as possible, but I told her I needed a few more months. It wasn't that I didn't want to see her. I did. But honestly, our relationship wasn't stable enough yet. We were still figuring things out, and in the back of my mind, I kept remembering some of the things she'd said in the past. Things about knives and hurting herself if I didn't give her enough attention. That weighed on me heavily. I didn't know how serious she was when she said those things, but it scared me. It made me hesitant, and it made me feel like I was walking on eggshells. Still, I cared for her, and I wanted to give the relationship a chance. So, when my mom called me into the other room, I sent my girlfriend a quick text. Hey, I'll be busy for a bit, but I'll call you later so we can talk more. I thought that was clear. I thought she'd understand, but apparently an hour was too long. By the time I checked my phone again, the tone of her messages had shifted completely. Instead of excitement about our future, she was accusing me of ignoring her, of not caring enough, of choosing my mom over her. At first, I tried to reason with her. I explained I wasn't ignoring her. I was literally talking to my mother, but nothing I said mattered. Within minutes, she dropped the bomb. We're done. I remember staring at the screen, absolutely stunned. It didn't feel real. How could a relationship collapse so fast over something so minor? I sat there, replaying the situation in my head. All I did was step away for an hour. That's it. Was that really enough for her to throw everything away? In that moment, I felt a mix of emotions: shock, confusion, and honestly, exhaustion. It wasn't just the breakup itself. It was the way it happened. No calm conversation. No chance to explain. Just an immediate jump to the nuclear option, ending the relationship. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just about one missed text or one delayed reply. This was about a deeper problem, a pattern. Looking back, I think that breakup was less about me being away for an hour and more about control. It was like she needed constant proof that I was choosing her, that I was available at every second, and the second she didn't feel that, she lashed out. And the breakup wasn't even the shocking part anymore. The shocking part was how normal it had started to feel. Because here's the truth. When breakups start happening over nothing, it means the foundation of the relationship is already cracked. And no matter how many times you tape it back together, those cracks are still there. At the time, I didn't want to admit it. I kept thinking maybe I could have done more. Maybe I should have texted more often, reassured her more, sacrificed, more. But deep down, I knew it wasn't about what I did or didn't do. It was about the instability that was baked into the relationship from the start. So, when people ask me, "What's the most shocking breakup you've ever had?" I don't think of a dramatic fight or a betrayal. I think of that night when my girlfriend ended things because I dared to spend an hour with my mom. A breakup over nothing that actually revealed everything. If I had to describe my relationship in one word, it would be this: unpredictable. One day, everything felt like it was heading in the right direction. We'd laugh, we'd plan, we'd talk about the future. The very next day, it was like walking into a storm I never saw coming. My ex-girlfriend and I didn't just argue like normal couples do. We'd go to extremes. It was all or nothing. And when things went wrong, we didn't just fight. We broke up. That became our cycle. Argue, break up, patch things up, and get back together over and over again. At first, I brushed it off as just passion. You know, some couples have fiery tempers, right? I told myself, maybe this is just how we are. But deep down, I knew it wasn't normal. The part that made it especially hard was how sudden everything happened. We could go from sharing "I love yous" to declaring the relationship over in the span of a few texts. It was dizzying. I never had time to process one fight before the next one came along. Imagine being strapped into a roller coaster where the drops are steep, the turns are sharp, and you don't even get a chance to catch your breath. That's what being with her felt like. But here's where it got more complicated. These breakups weren't always about the typical issues, like trust, jealousy, or distance. Sometimes they were triggered by things so small you wouldn't believe it. A late reply, a short text, spending time with family instead of instantly answering her messages. Those were the sparks that lit the fuse. And every time, she would take it to the extreme. See, my ex had a habit of bringing self-harm into the conversation. Whenever she felt I wasn't giving her enough attention, she'd say things like, "I don't know if I can keep going if you don't answer me," or hint at hurting herself with knives. At first I froze. I didn't know how to respond. I mean, what do you say when someone you care about threatens to hurt themselves if you're not constantly present? I felt trapped. On one hand, I didn't want to take any chances. I couldn't ignore her words. On the other, it felt unfair, like I was being emotionally blackmailed into always being there, even when I genuinely couldn't. And here's the thing. When she would bring up those extreme scenarios, I'd always blame myself. I thought, maybe I'm not being supportive enough. Maybe I should drop everything whenever she texts. Maybe I should just give more of myself to keep her safe. But no matter how much I gave, it was never enough. The cycle always came back around. The truth is, I started to feel uneasy. Not just about the relationship, but about myself. I was constantly questioning, am I doing enough? Am I being a bad boyfriend if I don't answer instantly? Am I overreacting for feeling suffocated? The emotional weight was heavy, and I didn't even realize how much it was draining me until much later. So, when she actually broke up with me over something as small as me talking to my mom for an hour, it wasn't just shocking. It was the final push that made me realize how unstable things had become. I wasn't just stunned because she ended things. I was stunned because it proved the roller coaster wasn't slowing down. If anything, the rides were getting wilder and more dangerous. Think about it. A relationship where every disagreement ends in a breakup, where every moment of silence turns into a crisis, where every lack of attention turns into a threat. That's not stability. That's chaos. And chaos, no matter how passionate it feels in the moment, isn't love. But at the time, I couldn't see it clearly. I was too deep in the cycle. Every breakup hurt, but every reunion gave me this false hope. She'd say she loved me, that she couldn't live without me, and I'd believe her. I wanted to believe her. It felt like walking through a storm, finally, finding shelter, only to realize it was temporary before the winds howled again. So when I tell you it was a roller coaster, I mean it in every sense of the word. The highs were dizzying, the lows were crushing, and the ride never stopped long enough for me to think clearly. And the scariest part, I didn't realize how much damage that roller coaster was doing until I was already strapped in too tight to jump off. Looking back, that's what stuns me most. Not that she broke up with me over something small, but that I was shocked every time it happened, even though it was part of the cycle. That's how strong the roller coaster effect was. It kept me coming back, even when I should have walked away. There are some things you never forget hearing, no matter how much time passes. For me, it was the first time my ex-girlfriend mentioned hurting herself with knives. We weren't even fighting at that moment. At least, not in the way you'd imagine. She was upset because I hadn't spent as much time talking with her that day, and out of nowhere, she dropped a sentence that froze me in place. If you don't give me attention, I might just hurt myself. At first, I thought I misread it. Maybe it was a bad joke, or maybe she meant something else. But then she doubled down, mentioning knives specifically, saying she didn't know what she might do to herself if I didn't care enough. That's when my stomach dropped. See, when someone you care about brings up self-harm, even once, it completely changes the way you see the relationship. It's not like an argument about trust or jealousy. It's heavier, scarier, and it puts this enormous responsibility on your shoulders. In that moment, I didn't know if she was serious or exaggerating. But here's the thing. You can't take chances with something like that. What if she really meant it? What if I brushed it off and something happened? So, I didn't brush it off. I froze, panicked, and then immediately started reassuring her. I told her I was there. I told her I cared. I promised I'd make more time. And just like that, the balance in the relationship shifted. From then on, I felt like I had to be constantly available. It wasn't a conscious decision. It was fear. The fear that if I wasn't there for every single moment she wanted me, something terrible might happen. That fear got into my head and never left. Anytime she hinted at being upset, I'd drop what I was doing. I could be studying, working, or spending time with family. But if she texted something like, "I don't feel okay," or worse, hinted at knives again, my whole world stopped. My heart would race. My chest would tighten, and I'd feel trapped between my life and her demands. The worst part, I didn't know if she really meant it. Sometimes she'd say it casually, almost like it was just another way to express being upset. But other times, her words sounded so real, so desperate, that I couldn't tell the difference. And when you can't tell the difference, you err on the side of caution. Every single time. To hear that from someone you love, it messes with your head in ways I can't fully explain. Relationships are supposed to be about trust, about support, about mutual respect, but this was something darker. It wasn't just love anymore. It was fear. Fear that I wasn't enough. Fear that something horrible would happen if I didn't give enough of myself. Fear that I'd be blamed if things went too far. And that fear slowly started to control me. I found myself glued to my phone, checking, constantly, making sure I hadn't missed a message. I'd get anxious if I didn't reply fast enough. My own mental space shrank because I was always worried about hers. I didn't realize it at the time, but that's a form of manipulation, even if she didn't fully intend it. Whether it was conscious or not, those comments put me in a position where my choices weren't really mine anymore. Because how do you say no to someone when the consequence they're dangling is hurting themselves? How do you set boundaries when every boundary feels like a life-or-death gamble? That's the power those words had over me, and it wasn't just once. The knife. Comments became a recurring theme whenever she felt neglected. Not every day, not even every week, but often enough that I started to anticipate them. I lived on edge, wondering when the next one would drop. Sometimes she'd even describe it in detail, saying things like she was bleeding, when later I'd find out she wasn't. That realization, that she might have been lying just to get my attention, was almost as devastating as believing it was real. Because either way, I was trapped. If she was telling the truth, I was responsible for saving her. If she was lying, I was still responsible. Because what if one day she actually did follow through? That uncertainty is like quicksand. The harder you try to escape it, the deeper you sink. Looking back now, I can see how much those words changed me. They turned me into someone who was constantly anxious, always second-guessing, and never able to relax in my own relationship. And the saddest part, I don't think she realized how much power those comments had. Maybe it was just a way for her to feel secure, to test my love, to pull me closer. But for me, it was terrifying. To love someone and also fear their words. It's a contradiction that eats you alive. And that's exactly what the knife comments did to me. They cut deeper than any blade ever could, because they left scars on my mind, my trust, and my sense of safety in the relationship. So let's go back to that night, the night everything snapped. I thought it would be just another ordinary evening. Nothing dramatic, nothing worth remembering. I had been chatting with my girlfriend earlier in the day, and I told her I needed to step away for a bit because I had to talk with my mum. I even made it clear, give me a couple of hours, and I'll call you after. That sounded simple enough, right? I wasn't ignoring her. I wasn't avoiding her. I was just being honest. I had family time to handle, and I'd circle back when I was free. In a healthy relationship, that explanation should have been enough. But in ours, nothing was ever that simple. Barely an hour later, my phone buzzed with a stream of messages. At first, I thought maybe she just missed me or wanted to say something sweet. But as I scrolled, my heart sank. The tone was sharp, angry, almost desperate. She was convinced I was ignoring her. In her mind, I wasn't talking with my mom. I was choosing not to talk to her. And before I could even type out a proper response, the words appeared on my screen. We're done. Just like that. Out of nowhere. I froze staring at the screen. It didn't make sense. How could a relationship end over something so small? We weren't fighting. I hadn't betrayed her. I hadn't even been gone that long. But to her, an hour of silence felt like abandonment. And in that moment, she decided to end everything. I wish I could say I had the perfect response ready. But the truth is, I didn't know what to say. I was flawed, completely blindsided. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but all I could manage were short, blunt replies. Okay, I don't understand. Why are you doing this? I didn't have the energy to argue, or to beg, or to reassure her the way she always seemed to want. I was drained, tired of the cycle, shocked at how quickly things had spiraled out of control. And here's the thing. I know some people would say I should have been more gentle, more supportive in that moment. Maybe I should have reassured her again, reminded her that I loved her, tried to calm her down. But honestly, I didn't have it in me. It felt ridiculous. I had done nothing wrong, and yet here I was, being punished with another breakup because I couldn't be glued to my phone every second. What hurt even more was the speed of it all. One moment, we were talking about meeting in real life. planning what our future might look like. The next, she was cutting me off completely, like none of it mattered. That kind of whiplash leaves scars. It makes you question not just the other person, but yourself. Was I really such a bad boyfriend? Was I failing in ways I couldn't see? Or was I simply stuck in a relationship where love meant never being allowed to step away, even for family? As the texts kept coming in, my emotions swung between disbelief and anger. I couldn't wrap my head around how fragile everything seemed. If an hour apart could trigger a breakup, what hope did we have for handling bigger problems down the line? Life is full of delays, responsibilities, and unexpected situations. If she couldn't handle me being with my mum for a single evening, what would happen when life threw something truly difficult at us? That was the breaking point for me. Not just the breakup itself, but the realization that this wasn't about one night. This was about a pattern, a relationship where stability was an illusion, where trust was paper thin, and where the smallest spark always lit the biggest fire. I sat there with my phone in hand, staring at those words, "We're done," and something inside me broke too. Not because I was heartbroken in the traditional sense, but because I was exhausted. Exhausted from walking on eggshells. Exhausted from constantly trying to prove my love. Exhausted from the endless cycle of fights and reconciliations that went nowhere. Looking back, I think that night was the moment I finally saw the truth. A healthy relationship doesn't end because one person spends an hour with their family. A healthy relationship doesn't spiral into chaos over tiny misunderstandings. And a healthy relationship definitely doesn't make you feel like you're failing just by living your life. That night was the breaking point, not just for her, but for me too, because it forced me to see that love, when it's built on constant fear and fragile emotions, isn't really love at all. It's a roller coaster you never asked to ride. One that only leaves you drained and dizzy. After that breakup, I thought things couldn't possibly get any more dramatic. But I was wrong. That night, after she sent the "We're done" message, she began saying things that made my blood run cold. She texted me that she was hurting herself, that she had a knife, that she was bleeding. I froze. My chest tightened, and my mind started racing a million miles per hour. What do you even do when someone you love tells you they're bleeding because of you? Every instinct in me screamed to take it seriously. I felt like I was holding someone's life in my hands, and the weight of that responsibility was crushing. In that moment, I seriously considered calling 911. I thought about giving them her name, her address, anything, so they could rush over and check on her. The thought of her sitting there, alone, in pain, possibly in real danger, tore me apart. I didn't want her to die. I didn't want to ignore her message, only to find out later it was true. Because if I did nothing, and something terrible actually happened, I knew I'd never forgive myself. But at the same time, part of me hesitated. A small voice in the back of my mind whispered, "What if she's not telling the truth? What if this is just another attempt to get attention?" I hated myself for even thinking that. Who doubts someone who says they're bleeding? But deep down, I knew this wasn't the first time she had used threats of self-harm to keep me close. Still, I couldn't take the risk. I stayed glued to my phone, checking every second, waiting for updates. My hands shook as I typed out frantic messages. "Are you okay? Please put the knife down. Talk to me. I'm here." Every minute that passed without a reply felt like an eternity. Hours later, she finally messaged me again, acting calmer. She said she was fine now. No hospital, no ambulance, no emergency. She brushed it off like it was nothing, leaving me confused, exhausted, and emotionally wrecked. And then, fast forward to when we eventually got back together, She admitted the truth. She told me she hadn't been hurting herself at all. She hadn't been bleeding. She hadn't even picked up a knife that night. Instead, she confessed that she only said those things because it was her habit to get attention. A habit. She even went so far as to describe fake details about bleeding, things she completely made up, just to make me react faster, just to make me panic enough to focus entirely on her. Hearing her say that broke something inside me, because at that moment, it hit me. This wasn't just relationship drama. This wasn't just a toxic cycle. This was manipulation. I had spent hours terrified out of my mind, ready to call the police, believing someone I loved was in danger, when the entire thing was a lie. She played on my deepest fears, my compassion, and my love, just to make sure she had my attention. That realization cut deeper than anything she had ever said before. It made me question everything. Every past time she had threatened self-harm. Was any of it real? Had I been pouring all my energy into saving someone who wasn't even in danger? And if so, what did that make me? A fool? A victim? Or just someone who loved too hard and trusted too much? The worst part is, even knowing the truth, I still stayed. I let her back into my life after that confession, telling myself, maybe it was just a mistake. Maybe she didn't know how much it hurt me. Maybe she would change. But in the back of my mind, I knew better. Once someone admits to lying about something as serious as self-harm, the trust is shattered. And without trust, what's left? Looking back, I can see it clearly now. That night, she crossed a line. She turned my love into a weapon against me. She showed me that she was willing to use the most terrifying words a partner can hear. I'm hurting myself, just to pull me back in. And that's not love, that's control. At the time, I didn't want to admit it. I told myself I could handle it, that maybe she just needed support, that maybe things would get better. But the truth is, I wasn't handling it. I was drowning in manipulation, too scared to walk away, too confused to see the damage being done. Because here's the thing. When someone lies about bleeding just to get your attention, it doesn't just break your trust. It changes you. It makes you live in constant fear, constant doubt, constant exhaustion. And that's when I finally realized. I wasn't in a relationship built on love. I was in a relationship built on lies. Looking back now, I ask myself a question that still stings. Did I make a mistake taking her back after everything that happened? At the time, my heart said one thing, and my mind said another. My heart whispered, she just needs love, support, and understanding. But my mind was screaming, this is a giant red flag. Don't ignore it. And yet, I ignored it. Why? Because love has this way of clouding your judgment. You tell yourself that people can change. You tell yourself that maybe their actions come from pain, from trauma, from insecurity, not from malice. You tell yourself that if you just give enough love, enough patience, enough of yourself, things will get better. And I desperately wanted to believe that. So when she came back, apologetic, vulnerable, saying she didn't really mean those self-harm threats, I convinced myself to forgive her. I told myself that maybe it wasn't manipulation. Maybe it was just her way of coping. A terrible habit she hadn't learned to control. I even went so far as to think, if I leave now, when she clearly needs me, doesn't that make me heartless? That's how I justified it. I stayed because I didn't want to abandon her. I stayed because I thought love meant standing by someone, even when they were at their worst. But in doing that, I overlooked the truth, that she had admitted to lying about something as serious as bleeding, just to get my attention. That wasn't a cry for help anymore. That was control. And the longer I stayed, the more I realized what that did to me. It put me on edge constantly, even when things were good between us. I lived in fear that one argument, one late reply, or one evening spent with family could trigger the same cycle all over again. I couldn't relax. I couldn't trust. I couldn't even breathe without wondering if my next decision would lead to another breakup or another knife comment. That's the damage it did, not just to the relationship, but to me. Trust is the backbone of any relationship. Without it, love becomes fragile, shaky, and unstable. And when someone admits to faking self-harm to keep your attention, that trust doesn't just crack, it shatters. I told myself we could rebuild it, but deep down, I knew we couldn't. Every time she texted me after that, a small part of me wondered, is this real or is this another lie to get me to react? That constant doubt ate away at me until I barely recognized myself. And here's the hard truth I had to face. Yes, I did make a mistake taking her back. Because by taking her back, I sent a message, not just to her, but to myself, that the behavior was somehow forgivable, that I was willing to overlook manipulation if it came wrapped in apologies and promises. I thought I was showing compassion, but in reality, I was teaching her that the cycle could continue and I'd still be there. That's what I regret most. Not the fact that I cared, but the fact that I cared at the expense of my own well-being. Because love should never feel like a trap. Love shouldn't make you second-guess every move, wondering if your partner will spiral if you don't answer fast enough. Love shouldn't force you into the role of savior, constantly rescuing someone from crises they invent. Love should feel safe, steady, and mutual, but mine didn't. Mine felt like walking a tightrope with no safety net. So, was I wrong to take her back? Yes, absolutely. But I don't say that with bitterness. I say it with clarity. At the time, I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was being loyal, supportive, compassionate. But what I really was blind. Blind to the obvious, warning signs. Blind to the manipulation. Blind to the toll it was taking on me. And that's the painful lesson I had to learn. When someone shows you they're willing to lie about life or death situations, just to hold on to your attention, you can't just brush it off as a mistake. You have to see it for what it is. Dangerous behavior that no amount of love can fix. In the end, taking her back didn't save her, and it didn't save us. All it did was prolong my own suffering, making me live in a constant state of anxiety. And if I could go back, I'd tell myself this: caring for someone doesn't mean sacrificing your peace. Compassion doesn't mean tolerating manipulation. And real love never comes at the cost of your sanity. Even after that night, even after the lies about bleeding and the late-night panic over whether she was really safe, the same pattern began to repeat itself. Not always in the exact same form, but close enough that I could recognize the rhythm. It would start small, an argument over me not replying quickly enough, or me spending time with my family instead of being glued to my phone. Then the tension would rise. She would say things that dug at my conscience, little jabs meant to make me feel guilty. And just when I thought I could handle it, she'd escalate, bringing up threats or dramatic statements designed to make me feel like if I didn't react the right way, I was the worst boyfriend in the world. It wasn't always the self-harm card anymore. Sometimes it was guilt trips like, if you loved me, you wouldn't make me feel this way. Or, I guess I just don't matter to you as much as your family does. Other times it was withdrawal, suddenly ignoring me, going cold, and leaving me scrambling to figure out what I did wrong. Each time, I felt like I was being pulled back into the same exhausting cycle. Conflict, guilt, reconciliation, repeat. And every single time, I asked myself the same questions. Am I overreacting for taking her words seriously? Was I wrong to think about calling the police that night? Or am I underreacting by letting myself get dragged back into this emotional storm? That's the thing about manipulation. It doesn't always look obvious in the moment. It creeps in slowly, making you question your own judgment. I knew what she was saying, and doing wasn't normal. But when you're in the middle of it, your brain starts to twist things around. You start to think maybe you're the problem. Maybe you're too sensitive. Maybe you're being unfair for needing space or boundaries. That's how I felt. Trapped in a loop where no response felt like the right one. If I reacted too strongly, I risked pushing her further into her guilt trips. If I didn't react enough, I looked heartless, like I didn't care. It was like trying to walk a tightrope where every step felt wrong. And yet, I stayed. I stayed because there were moments between the chaos that felt real. When she wasn't guilt-tripping me or threatening me, we could laugh, we could talk, we could dream about meeting in person. Those moments made me hold on to hope. Hope that maybe this time would be different, that maybe she was learning, that maybe love could smooth out the rough edges. But deep down, I knew the truth. The pattern was the same. The methods might have changed slightly, but the foundation didn't. She was still using fear and guilt to keep me close. She was still controlling the rhythm of the relationship by deciding when the drama started and when it stopped. And me? I was still caught in the cycle, still overanalyzing every word, still questioning my own instincts, still carrying the weight of responsibility for her emotions. It wasn't just draining, it was suffocating. That's when it hit me. The problem wasn't whether I was overreacting or underreacting. The real problem was that I was reacting at all. Because once you're in a relationship where every move you make feels like a trap, you've already lost your freedom to be yourself. Love shouldn't feel like a constant test, where the wrong answer could lead to threats, lies, or another breakup. Love should be steady, safe, and mutual. But with her, it wasn't. It was a cycle. And the more I let the pattern continue, the harder it became to break free. Here's what I've finally come to realize. After everything, if someone uses threats of self-harm, or worse, lies about it, as a way to control you, that's not love. That's not care. That's not even a misunderstanding. It's manipulation, plain and simple. And I'll be honest, it took me far too long to see that. When you're in the middle of a relationship like this, your heart wants to excuse it. You tell yourself they're just hurting. They just need support. They just need someone who won't give up on them. And in some ways, that feels noble. It feels like you're doing the right thing by standing by them. But looking back now, I see the truth. Standing by manipulation isn't love. It's self-destruction. I cared deeply for her. I really did. That's why I stayed longer than I should have. That's why I forgave things that should never have been forgiven. That's why I found myself pacing the floor one night, phone in hand, debating whether I should call 911 because I thought she might be bleeding out, only to find out later that none of it was real. That kind of stress, that kind of fear chips away at you until you're no longer yourself. And here's the part that hurts the most. By taking her back, I wasn't just hurting myself. I was also reinforcing her behavior. Whether I meant to or not, I showed her that if she pulled those stunts, I'd come running back. That meant the cycle could continue, because I didn't break it when I should have. That realization stings, because I never wanted to enable manipulation, but love can make you blind to what's really happening. No relationship should ever come at the cost of your peace of mind. Period. If being with someone leaves you constantly anxious, second-guessing yourself, and walking on eggshells, that's not love, that's emotional control. A real relationship is built on trust, respect, and honesty. Without those three things, all you have is chaos, dressed up as passion. Looking back, the red flags were there from the beginning. The constant need for reassurance. The guilt trips when I couldn't respond right away. The threats when things didn't go her way. But love made me minimize them, telling myself, it's not that bad. Maybe she'll grow out of it. Maybe things will get better. But here's the lesson. When you find yourself constantly asking, am I being paranoid or am I being manipulated? That question alone is usually your answer. Because in healthy love, you don't have to wonder. You don't have to doubt. You don't have to weigh whether or not you're being controlled. And that's what I want anyone listening to take away from my story. If you're in a relationship where your partner uses fear, whether it's threats, guilt, or emotional games to keep you close, step back and ask yourself, am I safe here? Do I feel respected? Do I feel free to be myself? If the answer is no, then no amount of love can fix it. Love is supposed to lift you up, not break you down. It took me a long time to accept that I had made a mistake. That doesn't make me weak. It makes me human. Sometimes we all want so badly for something to work that we overlook the truth staring us in the face. But now I can say with certainty, I learned my lesson, and it's a lesson I hope my story teaches others too. So here's my final thought. Love without trust isn't love. Love without honesty isn't love. And love that thrives on guilt, fear, or manipulation, that's not love at all. It's a trap. And the sooner you recognize it, the sooner you can walk away with your peace, your dignity, and your future still intact. Because no matter how much you care for someone, you should never have to sacrifice your sanity just to keep them close.